Hi guys, I'm Iconic. Welcome to part 2 of my PvP healing series. If you missed part 1, there's a link here and in the description below. In this video, I'm going to be discussing attributes, gear, skills, and some playstyle tactics for how best to manage your Magicka as a PvP healer below veteran rank. Feel free to watch the whole video or just jump to the section that you're interested in using these links or the links in the description. First off, let's just get the health question out of the way. Basically, a dead healer is a useless healer, so you need to have at least enough health to avoid getting one-shotted by NPCs and other players. But remember, you are a healer, so as long as you can definitely survive the initial burst damage, you can then just heal yourself back up. From current experience, I would say that around 2100 health is a reasonable minimum, to give yourself general PvP survivability at non-veteran ranks. So I've put enough attribute points into health to get just over 2100 HP, with the other points going into Magicka, which boosts my Magicka pool. Next, an important question at non-veteran level. Should you build to max out your Magicka pool or your Magicka regen, in order to get the best uptime when you're spamming your healing spells? After initial testing in Cyrodiil, with a base Magicka pool of about 1.5k and a base Magicka regen of around 117, I was getting about 5 casts of Honor the Dead before I ran out of resource. Then I put those numbers into a spreadsheet and did some number crunching, which I won't bore you with, and it actually turns out that for a 10% increase in max Magicka, I was getting a greater number of casts than an equivalent 10% increase in Magicka regen. As a further quick test of this theory, I switched my Munderstone from the Atronach, which gives Magicka regen, to the Mage, which gives higher max Magicka. And I saw an immediate jump from 5 casts of Honor the Dead to 7 before running out of Magicka. This is despite the fact that my Magicka regen had actually gone down from 117 to 91. Now it is true that after switching Munderstones it was taking noticeably longer for me to get my Magicka levels back up. But when you take into account that the healing abilities in this build are designed to return Magicka, I would recommend that you focus on building for maximum Magicka over Magicka regen to get a good healing output for non-veteran PvP. I've been able to craft the sets of gear I need for this character on my ult, so I'm using 5 pieces of Seducer, which give max Magicka, Magicka regen, and 8% less Magicka cost, along with 3 pieces of Magnus, which give max Magicka and Magicka regen. I chose divine traits at the time I crafted the gear, but knowing now what I do about how much better maxing out your Magicka is than your regen, I would recommend crafting everything with infused to get the most out of the Magicka enchants on each piece. If you don't have the ability to craft your own gear, then as a non-veteran there are several good sets that drop from world mobs or that you might be able to buy from guild stores. There's a link to the page on the Elder Scrolls Online Wiki that lists all available sets and their level ranges in the description below. To start with, I would look at the Healer's Habit, Stendarr's Embrace, Shroud of the Lich, and Necropotent sets. As a note for the future, you can purchase the PvP sets Archmage and Curse Eater from the PvP vendor bags for veteran ranks 1 to 12. These sets give excellent bonuses as an alternative to crafted sets. Of course, along with gear, you should also maximize your Magicka by taking the Munderstone the Mage, getting max Magicka enchants on all your armor pieces and shield, putting infused traits on your armor if you're a crafter, getting the Magicka cost reduction enchants on jewelry, taking skill line passives, taking racial passives, taking light armor passives, taking the vampire passive supernatural recovery if you're a vampire, and using appropriate food and drink buffs. So, you're all geared up, and you've taken all of the additional buffs and passives. But are there any skills for improving your Magicka sustainability during actual combat? Even before the nerf in patch 1.5.2, the main problem with using this ability as a principal Magicka generator was that you needed to be actually taking spell damage to generate Magicka back. And if you're in a situation in PvP where you're taking that kind of spell damage, you probably have bigger problems with your own immediate survival than you do with your Magicka pool. The reason this spell is now no longer viable at all for Magicka generation is that post-patch it can only absorb Magicka 3 times per cast, and therefore can only ever give back approximately half of the Magicka it costs to cast in the first place. On the surface, this ability looked promising. Cast an aura that both increases your survivability and also passively returns Magicka. However, there are 2 critical problems with it for PvP. Firstly, the aura is cast onto the ground and fixed there, if you leave the very small circle, you lose the Magicka regen. And secondly, it takes 15 seconds to receive the full Magicka return, which is only slightly greater than the original cost of the spell. This means that you would essentially have to cast the spell, stand still for 15 seconds, and all this for only a tiny amount of Magicka gain. This is simply impractical for PvP healing, where mobility and positioning are two of your most important strategies. Again, this ability looked like it had promise. Cast it on an enemy to gain Magicka back for every attack. It stands to reason if you're going to be using the Resto Staff heavy attack to regain Magicka, why not use this ability to make that regain even greater? However, unfortunately, the reality of using the staff heavy attack against enemy players is that you're generally blind casting into a constantly moving mass of overlapping bodies, with no clear single target. This means that the 1.5 second cast time on Siphon Spirit makes it almost impossible to even get this ability cast on a target, never mind trying to track that target for all of your subsequent attacks to get the benefit from the spell. It's simply much easier and more practical to spam heavy attacks into the crowd and grab Magicka back wherever and whenever you can. So this really just leaves us with the Resto Staff heavy attack. This isn't actually such a bad thing, as the heavy attack gives a reasonable amount of Magicka back, as well as generating additional DPS pressure on enemy players. One note here, enchant your Resto Staff with a Magicka return enchantment to get the best regen results. Of course, gear, skills and buffs are only half of the solution to effective use and management of your Magicka. Equally important is how you use it. As I mentioned in the first part of this PvP healing series, I'm running 3 healing skills that are not necessarily the highest healing output, however they are all pretty Magicka efficient for different reasons. Healing Springs is an area of effect heal that is not very powerful when cast only once, however it can be stacked on top of itself for a much more respectable heal over time. It also has a good range and can be effectively used to stabilize multiple players who are suddenly caught in a bad situation. Even more importantly, however, this ability gives Magicka back for every player it affects up to a maximum of 3, therefore reducing the cost of every use as long as you make sure to use it on large groups. Honor the Dead is your single target burst heal ability. It can do a respectable amount of instant healing in a short amount of time, when you really need to get someone, including yourself, out of serious trouble. Even though the other morph, Breath of Life, is arguably more Magicka efficient, as it heals 3 targets rather than just 1 for the same Magicka, Honor the Dead actually returns 15% of its Magicka cost when you use it on players with less than 50% health, which will be most of the time that you use this spell anyway. And even more importantly, you're never going to be wasting Magicka on healing other players nearby who don't really need it, as can often happen with Breath of Life. Purifying Ritual is an absolutely vital part of your PvP healing build, simply because it allows other players to remove all damage over time on themselves, for example fire or disease from siege weapons, as well as giving them a small heal. This is not even to mention the fact that players standing within the aura get an additional 30% bonus healing from your Honor the Dead, which makes that ability even more Magicka efficient. And finally, don't forget that often the best defense is a strong offense. Rather than simply standing at the back and trying to keep everyone up through sheer healing power alone, attacking with your Resto Staff to regain Magicka, or more directly with stuns and CCs, will often give the players you're trying to help the breathing space they need to use their own healing or damage mitigation skills, which in turn makes your job easier in the long run. With this in mind, I will be putting out the next video in the series soon, on damage mitigation and defensive tactics for PvP healers. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to know when that's available. Thanks for watching, see you next time.